Thank you for doing this.
Some might say. we
One
have
mad
to.
after just like that. I didn't use that.
Some might just say yours.
Senator Hammond? I just
Yes.
We're just going to have you test your mic real quick. So if you can just say a couple words, national anthem, alphabet.
A couple of words.
Yeah.
Couple words.
You got a
Couple
We all
words.
good?
Good.
More than he said the entire session
Yep.
already.
Who's next?
Thank you.
Mr. McKean, we're going to be up next.
Vote for David McKeon.
We all good there?
All right.
Test 1, 2, 3, test 1, 2, 3, check, 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 check.
We all good? Great.
Okay.
Thank you. Mr. Tarkanian?
Test 1, 2, 3. Test 1, 2, 3.
We're all good, guys. Thanks. All right, so you want to do first?
Welcome to Indie Debates 2018, a production of the Nevada Independent, UNLV TV, and the Hank Greenspun School of Journalism and Media Studies. I'm John Ralston, the editor of the Nevada Independent. Today, we're joined by 4 Republican candidates vying for Congressional District 3. That's the district now held by Jackie Rosen, who's running for the U.S. Senate. The winner will face the Democratic nominee. The candidates here today are Scott Hammond, he's a Nevada state senator who has been a teacher. David McKeon, he's a businessman and former chairman of the Clark County Republican Party. Michelle Mortensen's a former television journalist. And Danny Tarkanian is a lawyer and a businessman. This debate is not as structured as some you may have seen. There are no time limits on answers or rebuttals, although we were going to allow all the candidates to have an equal amount of time, but not filibuster. Hear that? Not filibuster. They're all nodding in case you can't see them. We encourage the candidates to interact with each other as well. And sitting next to me and joining in the questioning is reporter Megan Messerly. All right, let's get started. We're going to start with Senator Hammond with the first question. Name one thing the Trump administration has done, and you can't say Yucca Mountain, that you disagree with.
Disagree with? I was not too fond of the budget that they just passed. I really felt like if you want to talk about the future of the United States, you have to look at its credit and the debt that we have. I think that every future budget needs to address the debt question we have. How are you going to bring the debt down? I don't want to turn into a future Greece or a Portugal. I lived in Portugal for many years and love the country, but I know that those who live there now are talking about how It's difficult right now, the austerity programs that they're thinking about doing there. I just think that the debt has got to be something you address in every single budget. There's got to be something in there that says this is how we're going to address it for the next year, the next year, the next year. They didn't have it in there, so I did not like that.
Mr. McKeon?
I support President Trump, but I do not like the appointment of Attorney General Jeff Sessions.
Why?
I don't think he needed to step down from his position. I think what he should have done was follow through with the rule of law, let the process take its place while he was there, and he could have had a more impactful resolution to the problem that we're facing right now in our government.
So do you not think Jeff Sessions is doing a good job as Attorney General? Is that your problem too, or
I don't think he's doing a good job.
because?
This is blown out of control. This entire witch hunt, which Donald Trump calls it, I feel it is a witch hunt. Rob Rosenstein came out and he said, look, there's been no collusion. And that was the basis for the investigation. This should be shut down. It should be over with.
Okay. Ms. Mortensen, same question. Anything you can name the Trump administration has done besides trying to fund Yucca Mountain that you disagree with?
Sure, there are a few items, but I'll just bring up the transgender military ban. I don't agree with him on that. I believe people who want to fight for our country, who are capable of fighting for our country, should have every right to do so. It's an honor to fight for our country.
All right, a straightforward answer. Danny Tarkanian.
The ominous budget that was passed, even he said he didn't agree with it, and in retrospect would not have wanted to sign it. I don't know how it got so far down the line that he didn't have that choice. Not only is it going to increase our debt $1.3 trillion, but the priorities in it were misplaced.
So, but Trump did, he presented that budget, right? And
Well-
then later he said he never should have done it, right?
Well, I'm not sure if he presented it, that Congress and Senate passed it, and he signed it.
Well, but the president proposed a budget as well.
It wasn't the budget that he signed.
So it was the one that he signed that you don't agree with?
Absolutely.
Okay, all right. Megan?
So I wanted to ask you guys about immigration. So as all of you know, President Trump presented his 4-point immigration plan that included a pathway to citizenship for DACA recipients. Under what circumstances would you feel comfortable allowing a pathway to citizenship for DACA recipients? We'll start with you, Mr. McKeon.
Start with the green card process, because that is where it all starts. And people that haven't broken any laws, if they came here without any influence of their own, they were brought here, that's where we should start. If they've broken the law since they've been here, then that disqualifies them from having the opportunity to get that green card.
And with the green card process, is that a law that we should pass now? Is it part of a bigger immigration package, or should we just
We already have
pass
that
something
process.
right now?
We already have that process in place.
But for DACA recipients right now, they don't have any assurances that they'll be able to stay in this country right now. So should there be some sort of green card process to allow them to go through and
The
get
green
that?
card process is already in place. It's that people overstay their visas and then they get in trouble because they're afraid. So people just need to get in line, follow the process, and follow the law. If they follow the law, then there's extensions, just like there is with taxes. You can file an extension when you're filing your tax returns. People just need to realize that the rule of law is there to protect them, not to hurt them. So if they start getting engaged with the legal system, they can actually start finding that's a benefit to them. Running and hiding from it does not benefit any of us.
You said for people, though, who overstay their visas. What about for people who did cross the border illegally, didn't have any sort of legal status at any point?
Those people need to be deported back to the country from which they came.
Okay. Ms. Mortensen?
I fully support the president's 4-pillar plan that he announced during the State of the Union, which includes securing the border, making a pathway for 1.8 million DACA recipients, which is more than anyone else has ever offered in the past, ending the visa lottery system, and limiting chain migration. So I 100% support that plan, and I think that's what we need to do. With the DACA recipients, not everyone who is a DACA recipient is a criminal or a racist or a problem. Many of them are students and young people who are contributing to our society. Many of them are members of our military. Properly vet them and find a legal pathway for them to become citizens, because the problem is illegal immigration. That's the IL in front of the word legal. We want legal immigration into our country.
Okay. Mr. Tarkanian?
We need to find a solution to the DACA problem. It's been something that's been discussed for many, many years. But you can't solve that problem until you solve what's causing that problem. And that means the people that are coming into our country illegally, whether it's crossing the border or overstaying their visas. So first of all, you need to secure our borders, whether it's with a wall or a combination of both. But you need to be able to know who's coming to the country and what's coming to the country. Second of all, we need to do a better job for people that have overstayed their visas, finding those individuals, making them either leave the country or re-up their visa applications. We need to, as President Trump has said, a couple of his other proposals, chain migration should be limited to the immediate family and the children. visa lotteries, I don't believe should exist, and we should get rid of those. I do believe that we need to bring people in that are coming from countries where they're being persecuted. My family came from Armenia during the genocide in the early 1900s. It is something that's very important that we maintain as a country. One thing that's missing in President Trump's proposal is e-verification. And I'm not sure why he's not, because most people agree with this, whether you're on the Republican side or the Democrat side. E-verification basically would require every employer to verify the legal status of any employee they hire. That should be a part of any proposal that's there. Once you find those proposals, once you solve those problems, then I think we need to figure out what to do with not only the dreamers that are here, but the ones that came here illegally, but have been good citizens. And I think we should give them legal residency. The ones I've talked with, and even leaders in the Hispanic community, all think legal residency would be sufficient. Giving citizenship to people that have come here illegally before the people who've done it the right way waiting in line outside the country isn't fair. But I understand that you have to negotiate between both sides, and if you can get the other items I just mentioned, then maybe you can go further than the legal residency.
So if you had those other items, including, chain migration as you described it, E-Verify, then you would feel comfortable having some sort of pathway to citizenship for DACA recipients if that all was in the same bill?
I would feel comfortable providing legal residency so they would not have a fear of being deported. If it was something that we had to vote on to get those other items, I certainly would take a serious consideration and may well do so.
But you won't say either way whether you would for sure vote for legal residency.
Well, why would you want to give away
recipients.
your most generous negotiation tool? Of course, this is something that will have to be negotiated upon. The Democrats right now won't even accept what President Trump's offered, which is far more generous than even their own leaders in the parties have had over the years. So again, I think, and I've talked with leaders in the Hispanic community, legal residency where they would not be deported, they would come out of the shadows, they could work and not have the fear of being deported is something they've all agreed with. Now, if it's required to get citizenship, look, I'm not going to be the one that stands in that way.
Okay, we'll move on to Senator Hammond.
Well, first of all, let me say I appreciate the question, Megan. I think I like the fact that it's already the second question you've asked, because it's an issue that does need to be addressed quickly. And I think we should have addressed it years ago. I was a high schooler when Reagan was in office, and we tried to address this, and we looked at we basically allowed all those who are here in this country, could prove that they've been working, were good citizens, the chance to become citizens. And it was a hard process, but the other part of that was they wanted to try and figure out how to make sure we knew who was coming into the country back then. Well, they only did half of that. They allowed the amnesty program allowed all those people here a chance to become citizens, but we didn't really, we didn't go back and look at how we could control the borders, how we could find out who's coming into the country. And it's not just the borders, it's people coming in on visas, people coming in through ports of entry, ships, airports. And it's become a huge, in my mind, it's become a huge problem, not only for public safety here for citizens of the United States, but also a human rights issue. It's impacting people who are trying to get in here, who are being used by a criminal element and losing their lives in the process. So it's something we have to address, and we should have addressed a long time ago. In addressing it, you're going to have to look at all the issues at one time. I mean, this is going to require compromise. Somebody on the left is going to have to compromise and help with the border security. Somebody on the right is going to have to address and look at the DACA situation. Those young children who were brought over here, they didn't know where they were going. They were 2 years old, they were 3 years old, a year old, and they came over here. We're going to have to find a solution for those young, well, they're not so young anymore, but some of those young people who are here and they've been working hard their whole lives and would like to stay in the only country they know. So I think that going forward, when you talk about chain migration and you talk about the border security, a wall, or any form of any kind of security we have, you have to do it all together so that both sides can sit down and get something out of that.
So if other proposals in the bill, some of the family migration issues, border security were in a bill, would you be willing to vote for the bill if it included a pathway to citizenship for DACA recipients?
Yeah, as long as, again, we're looking at making sure all those other issues are addressed. For many of us, it's about border security. It's about making sure we know who's coming in, and like I said, not just across the border, but in any method or any means possible into the United States. Look, I lived in Portugal for a couple of years, and on me, I always had to carry this little cartón, right, that I had to show in case I was ever pulled over or ever stopped when I'm walking along. They said, why are you here? Where are your papers? I had it, showed it. They moved on. That was it. And it was close. That's legal migration or legal immigration.
I'm a big fan of legal immigration. I think the immigrants have done a great job of helping us with our economy in the last 30 years. I think that they've taken jobs other people have not wanted. I think that it's great having people who want to be in this country and contribute to it. So I really think that we have to find a solution to this particular issue instead of kicking it down the road. Just every time we talk about it, somebody just keeps kicking the can down the road.
Okay, thank you.
No kicking of the cans down the road on this debate. So this is a very complicated issue, and it has been reduced to sound bites a lot. So I want to ask a couple of follow-up questions about immigration because I think it is important. Let's start with you this time, Ms. Mortensen. You mentioned you support the president's plan, all 4 pillars, including 1.8 million DACA recipients getting a pathway to citizenship. What about the overall goal? My first question is of offering everybody who's here illegally eventually a pathway to citizenship, assuming that they go to the back of the line, go through background checks, etc. Do you believe that a pathway to citizenship should be offered to everybody who's here illegally, providing that they go to the back of the line and whatever other conditions you might put on it?
We need to create a way to have legal immigration. If you go to any country illegally, you just don't get to stay there and drain resources and just stay there and say, oh, I'm here, so I just get to stay. That's different from asylum issues. We're just talking about coming here illegally. There's a right way and a wrong way. We have to do things the right way. In 1989, when Ronald Reagan gave his farewell address from the White House, he described the bright and shining city on a hill. And how did he describe it? It was a city with walls, and the walls had doors, and the doors were open. That means there is a way to come in legally, and that's what we need to go for. Congress has wasted so much time for my entire life punting and not taking care of immigration reform. The reason is because we have so many politicians who just go in there and love to hear themselves talk. We saw that quite a bit here today. Yammer, 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 say nothing at all and getting nothing done. That's what Congress does. Nothing and overreact. It's time that we start electing people who will do what they say and actually get something done.
All right, so I think you were number 2 to invoke Reagan. That means you still have to invoke Reagan and you still have to invoke Reagan. But having said that, Ronald Reagan as president also was someone who proposed what is now called amnesty by a lot of people. And you didn't really get to the answer to the question, so I'm going to press you on it. Pathway to citizenship. I understand you support legal immigration. Should everyone who is here now illegally, they're not just going to disappear, right? Whatever the estimates are. Should they have a chance to become American citizens or not?
No, because some of these people are not people we want here. We want the best and the brightest. Some people are criminals. Some people are people who've done heinous things. Not all of them are, but not everyone deserves citizenship
Do
here.
some deserve it?
Some probably do. You know, one of the things that I encountered when I was at Channel 8 numerous times were people who had come to this country and wanted to become citizens. They tried to do everything correctly. And do you want to know what frauds and con men and lawyers did to them? They took thousands upon thousands upon thousands of dollars from them, saying that they were going to help them become citizens. And it was all a fraud. It was all a scam. And I worked with the Attorney General's office to get those people prosecuted. See, that's a problem. There are people who want to do it the right way. There are people who are trying to do it the right way. But the cons and the frauds are taking advantage of the situation. Those people should not be penalized because of the awful people who are trying to scam them.
Finally, one other question, and that is, this does need to be discussed in a comprehensive way, some people believe, including the Republican congressman from the state of Nevada, Mark Amodei, who has signed a discharge petition to essentially force this debate onto the House floor. If you were in the House, would you have signed that discharge petition?
We absolutely need to be talking about this on the House
So you
floor.
would have signed it?
Yeah, but we need to talk about it. The fact that Congress is not taking action is the exact problem. That's what I just said earlier. Congress is not taking action. The president, the reason why he rolled back DACA, right, was because he wanted Congress to do its job. I know that's a novel concept because we haven't had a politician who is willing to do their job in quite some time. And that's what we need to do our job.
All right, Danny Tarkanian, you got to some of this, but I want to just pin you down here on the
I'll try to answer your questions.
Right, okay. Path to citizenship for everybody who is here now, should that be available, assuming they go to the back of the line, go through criminal background checks, et cetera? Because you were talking with Megan about legal residency. Should everybody have a chance for a path to citizenship in this country?
So you're articulating it wrong, so it's an easy no, they shouldn't, because there are some people that have committed crimes and they're people that we don't want in the country. We should deport them. But let's talk about the people that came here illegally, been good citizens, well, good residents, and have worked, provided for the community and have family members here. I believe it would be unfair to grant citizenship to those individuals, even though I'm not saying we should be rounding them up and deporting them. The reason why I think it's unfair is there are millions of people that have applied for citizenship the right way. They don't get to come into the country and enjoy the benefits of being here in the United States. They've waited in line. I've heard so many people talk with me. I've heard in different campaigns where people come up to me and say, you know, my sister has waited 9 years now to get in here the right way and she can't get in here. It's just not right. Then to give, as you say, well, give what? Legal residency to the people that are here illegally now, and then after they go to the end of the line, they wait 9 years, they then get citizenship, well, they're still here. They're still enjoying the benefits. And see, that's where the problem comes. So I wouldn't be in favor of that. I've been very consistent with that throughout these different elections and interviews that I've had with you. But let's be honest about this thing. We need to get something passed. We need to get something done where we solve some of the bigger problems that are out there: border security, chain migration, e-verification. And if we have to give up a little bit to get all that, then I would be in favor of that. And let me answer the deal about Mark Amadeus. I absolutely would not vote for that. And the reason we
You would not sign the petition?
Absolutely
you mean?
not. And the reason you don't is because all the Democrats are going to come together and they're going to vote to give citizenship to the illegal immigrants. And you're going to have a few of the Republicans that are in some Democrat seats, they're going to vote the same way. Therefore, you're going to get a bill passed, or at least through Congress, that's going to give citizenship to illegal immigrants, or the Dreamers, whichever one it is, before you solve all the other problems. You can't just say we're going to open up the discussion. We control the Republicans, Congress, Senate, and the governor and the president's office.
Then why be afraid to discuss it if you control
Well, no,
all
because
of
you
them?
have, because it's, again, there are a lot of, we could say some of them here in our state, some of our Republican legislators that would vote to give citizenship to people that are here illegally before they would solve the problems. And we have the control not to allow that to happen because we control this, the House. And unless we lose that in this next election, we should not give up.
But that's a
the
political
opportunity.
argument, isn't it?
No, it's a
Not
strategy
more than a
argument.
substantive argument.
It's a strategy argument. Legislation is the art of compromising and negotiating. You just don't give up everything, and then you don't get anything you want out of it.
All right. Senator Hammond, so the first question is, path to citizenship beyond DACA. Would you support some kind of mechanism to give everybody who is here now illegally the potential for a path to citizenship?
And I know you're going to hate the answer. It depends. Again, we are talking about how you negotiate, and I don't believe that you negotiate one piece of the whole 4 pillars or whatever else you want to put into that soup when the discussions
But
begin.
again, that's a political argument. I'm asking where
Right.
you are philosophically in terms of, do you think that people in this country illegally deserve the right to a path to citizenship at some point? Forget about the politics and negotiating tools. Do they deserve that?
Well, again, I think the argument was brought up. A lot of them are here. It'd be hard to get rid of all of them all at once. But at the same time, they're doing something illegal. You know, they came here illegally. They knew they were coming here illegally. They took a chance because the situations probably back home were so deplorable that they needed to be somewhere where they could make some sort of a life for themselves, their children, their families back in their home countries. They had to do something, so they took that chance and they came here. But they did it illegally. There's so many people who have done it legally, and they have a hard time getting into the country. And my heart goes out to those people who have done it legally. I love immigration. I love legal immigration. They've come here. If you're going to go to the back of the line, does that mean that you also go back to where you came from and wait until you're there? I don't, that's not what we're asking for. I mean, that's not what I think you're asking for in that question. And I think that's the sticking point is now that they're here, they did something illegal. Are we going to reward them by allowing them to go to the back of the line, look at their past, make sure that they be working like they did with the amnesty program, but also look at their criminal background, make sure they're worthy of staying here. I think that it's hard to make that argument because.
So you're generally against the path to citizenship then?
I am.
Okay.
Now, when it comes to DACA, I think it's a different issue.
Right. Well, we've been through that. So Michelle Mortensen says she would have signed the discharge petition that Mark Amity signed. Danny Tarkanian says absolutely not. What do you say?
Look, I'm not afraid to open the discussion, especially when we, do control all the different mechanisms in place. I think that that's a great time.
So
to
you
start
would have
an
signed
argument.
you would have signed the petition.
I would say again, it depends on what it says in the petition. Is it saying we were going to discuss all these issues at one time? Like I said, you can't discuss one. I was back there in the 80s when they started the amnesty program. They only solved one part of it. And then for the last 30 years, we've been trying to solve the other part.
Who
I wanna make
proposed
sure-
that in the 80s again? Who was the president's name? You want to say his name again?
Did you already forget that?
Yeah. All right. So you're not sure if you would have signed the petition?
No, because I want to make sure that we are discussing all those together. If that's what
Would have
the-
just brought the debate to the House floor.
Yeah, and I'm not worried about a debate. I think it's great to start the conversation. I like the fact that he's pressing it and saying we got to start this, because for so long we have been just dismissing it, waiting, and it has become a more political issue than it really ought to be. We got to be moving beyond this, and solving these issues and moving beyond it.
All right, Mr. McKeon, you only have time for one word. No, I'm kidding. Go.
No. But I'll tell you what, a lot of people that come here illegally aren't assimilating. And that's the problem. Our country, as a melting pot, is not assimilating. We're dividing ourselves into the different groups. So the people that have come here illegally, they just want to be here with a legal status so they can stay here for fear of deportation. If you came here illegally, I'm okay with the green card status so that you can be here legally, pay your taxes, and thrive. But the people that have been coming here legally, those are the ones that we need to be really helping, because they're paying a lot of money and they're getting a lot of delays, and they're the ones that are actually trying to assimilate by honoring the rule of law, by coming into our country and supporting our Constitution. And that is what I favor. So yeah, do I put a hard line down and say no? Yes, I say no to that.
So let me just play devil's advocate with
Sure.
you on that for a second. A couple of you, I think, have mentioned some of these undocumented immigrants have been paying taxes. They've been working in
They've
the
been getting tax
shadows.
refunds.
But let me just finish. And yet you're saying that they should not have the ability then, because they've been good citizens, they should not have a path to become an actual
Congress
citizen.
passed a law in '96 saying if you are an illegal alien, you receive no federal benefits. But yet the IRS continues to issue ITIN numbers, individual taxpayer identification numbers, giving these individuals tax refunds. That's breaking the law. And in this past Tax Cut and Jobs Act bill, Congress literally said you will no longer issue tax benefits to people that file a tax return without a Social Security number. Now the California legislature is saying, okay, wait a minute, we want the California tax-paying base to make up that difference. And that's why Californians are saying, wait a minute, they're actually now starting to feel the impact of these laws. When it's other people's money, you can be real generous. But when it starts to hit home, people start to realize this isn't working. So that is why I'm saying no, because the financial impact is very real, and we need to be serious about it. So saying no is not popular, but at least the people know where I stand. And at least they know where my decision is going to be, so that when we get forward in this legislation, they know that when they vote for McKeon, they're going to get a guy that's actually telling them where they stand.
And what about the issue of the discharge petition that
Let's
Mark
debate.
Amadeus signed? Okay.
Let's debate. I mean, you're electing people that like to talk, but then they don't want to talk on the floor of Congress. I mean, it's a joke. The point is we're elected to stand up and make a position so that people know where we stand. And that's why I think as candidates, we need to be very clear and right to the point. So when someone goes to pull that lever for that candidate, they know that's what they're getting, because they're sick of that. They're sick of being told one thing and getting another.
So you would have signed it?
Yeah,
Okay.
let's debate it.
Megan?
So turning to healthcare, there have been obviously a lot of conversations about healthcare last summer. You know, the conversations are ongoing today. I wanted to ask you guys sort of straightforward question. Do you think Americans have a right to health insurance? And we're going to start at the end with Mr. Tarkanian.
Thank you, and that's a good question, but you play with the word right. Do they have a constitutional right to health care? Of course not. It's not in the Constitution. Do we as a country, a developed, benevolent country, have an obligation to take care of the people, the citizens and the residents in our country that are here? Then yes, we do, and we should do everything we can to provide that health care to them. The problem we have with our current health care system is we can say we have more people that are on the rolls and they're getting health care because the federal government's paying for it, and the hardworking middle-class Americans, like my family, have seen our premiums go up over 400%, deductibles 500%, and copays 600%. So you could have insurance, but it's not affordable to use. When you go in and you pay so much for it, by the time you go in and see a doctor, you never get into that deductible, so you've been paying more than that. We have to find reasonably cost-efficient health care for as many people and preferably the entire country that we can. But the cost is the most important thing, and that's where the Affordable Care Act has missed the boat. It's unaffordable. It's made it unaffordable unless you get federal subsidies to pay for it. So yes, we should, as a country, provide health care to the people in our country legally, but it should be at a cost that we can afford, particularly the people that are paying for it themselves.
So how do we do that, and how are we going to pay for it?
Every time in our country, in our economic system, which has been the greatest in the entire world, when we create more competition, We get a better product at a lower cost. The Unaffordable Care Act has created less competition. Here in Nevada, here in Clark County, there's 3 counties in Nevada that have 2 health insurance providers, 14 that only have 1. There is no competition. So you've seen prices skyrocket. 40% this last year is going to be another 40 to 50% next year. You have to create more competition. And the way you do that is you need to, one, you need to create the market-based principles, allow people to pick and choose what kind of insurance they want. You have companies compete for those people. You allow companies to buy insurance across state lines like they do with every other type of insurance. You allow people to have health savings accounts so they can leave employers and be able to take their health insurance to another job. You need to create more market-based competition. And finally, it's the only product, at least major product in the entire country, that we don't know the cost of it when we purchase it. There needs to be some type of mechanism put in place where people see what the cost is and they decide whether they want to spend that cost to use the service at this place or another place. Competition, better product, lower cost.
So you talk about creating competition so people have choices, but how do you, I know you mentioned, buying plans across state line, but how do you, force companies, encourage companies to offer plans in places that aren't very lucrative? I mean, that's been a lot of the problem here in Nevada, is that the rural markets, just aren't big money makers, So how do you get companies to come in? Is there some sort of legislation? What's the plan?
There's not the case. There was more companies offering insurance before the Unaffordable Care Act was implemented. It was because of the Unaffordable Care Act that companies were dropping out of the business because they couldn't afford it, because of the requirements they had into it. We need to be able to allow people to pick and choose what product is best for them. Right now you have one size fits all whether we want to purchase that type of insurance or not. And I understand we want to be able to have a pool of money coming in so people that have certain types of illnesses, we can cover them and everything. That's understandable, but there was risk pools that we had before that would be much more cost efficient if we did that to bring down the cost or have people with pre-existing conditions be there. You need to have more insurance companies in here that are providing, or even doctors themselves being able to provide services. Doctors have different prices for each individual that comes in there based upon if they're part of a plan, if they come in. Same thing with hospitals. The whole system is screwed up compared to what we do with every other product in our country. Why don't we get back to what's made our country so great, the world's greatest economic force, and that's the market-based competition.
So should there be less required benefits that insurance companies have to offer so people are, able to buy higher deductible plans and plans that offer fewer benefits?
Absolutely.
Okay.
There's not much I could disagree with on that particular answer. The question,
you,
first
Scott.
of all, was, you're welcome. The question the question was, first of all, is it a right? I think that we're one of the most generous countries in the world. Those who cannot afford, we've been taking care of them. When they come to a hospital, nobody's refused. And so I don't think that necessarily I don't think it's a right. It's not a constitutional right, but it certainly is something that we care for one another. We care about our neighbors, we care about those who are in our community, and we take care of those who do not have anything whenever there's a need. And so I think that we do a good job of that. But I agree that the Obamacare that has been instituted, it's certainly not going to be a friend of those who are in the middle class and those who are small business owners in the near future when deductibles keep going up and up and up. We've got to find that solution, or else we could be looking at skyrocketing costs that families sitting around a kitchen table won't be able to afford, and we'll have to start cutting back in other areas that they really can't afford to do that.
So what's the solution, though? I mean, what's the plan then if the Affordable Care Act isn't the answer?
Well, and you heard some of that a minute ago. Right now, I'm always amazed that we have not opened this up. First of all, the whole idea of insurance goes way back to when we had a problem with during not the recession, but the I'm at a lost words there, but when nobody could get work, companies would bring to potential employees the opportunity to have insurance. It was a perk. If you work for us, you're going to give you this insurance. We've tied it too closely to work, and so really it's about trying to get that away from your job and trying to buy it on the market, trying to find a plan that works for you. As was mentioned, allowing that free market principle to really take effect. And so you're selling people fewer products, perhaps, but with a higher deductible or lower deductible, with higher price, whatever the smorgasbord of particular things,
things you can offer somebody, I think that you have to have that free market principle, because I think that's what brings down the price.
So if they're not offered through a company, companies might have a couple of different plans that their, employees can pick and choose from. HR sort of structures those plans and decides what they want to offer to their employees. Should those types of plans be offered on a sort of individual exchange like they are now? Is that the answer then, if we need to separate it from being employer sponsored?
Well, you just need to go out there and offer it to people and say, this is what you can buy, but it's got to be free market. It can't be, this is what's required. You have to buy something here. If you don't want to buy insurance, then you should have to. I don't think you have to. You shouldn't be forced to do it, at least. And so maybe companies continue to offer it because it is a perk, and some people like to go to work for somebody who does offer a great plan.
Does the government have a responsibility in making healthcare affordable so that, even middle income people, mom and pop trying to scrape by, can afford those plans?
Sometimes government just needs to get out of the way. I think sometimes it gets in the way too much, and that's what makes it unaffordable.
Okay. Move on to Mr. McKeon.
Do you remember when President Obama said that a family of 4 would save $2,500 with this new plan, Obamacare? That if you liked your doctor, you could keep your doctor? And then it had to go to the Supreme Court for the individual mandate. You had to pay for insurance even if you weren't going to have insurance. It's completely antithetical to what I believe. I believe that the government, its responsibility is to be like a referee at a football game. They stand on the sidelines, they don't get involved, they watch the players play, and if anyone's doing something wrong, they call them out on it and they hold them to account. Well, Congress needs to be held to account for this one. The Democrats controlled the House, the Senate, and the White House, and they passed this wet blanket of a bill that has completely depressed the economy. And that's why I supported the Tax Cut and Jobs Act bill, because it actually took the intent away from that bill. It took that individual mandate away. It essentially is dead. And you'll find states going around realizing and probably filing a lawsuit with the Supreme Court to actually finalize and get rid of a full repeal through the legal system instead of through Congress. But here's my thing. Look at how they tried to fund it. It harkens back to the day when Bill Clinton said everyone needs to own a home. And people could go and they had no income, no job, and they got approved. They called them ninja loans. And that led to the biggest foreclosure crisis in the country. And it was like a tsunami here in Nevada. It wiped us out. People were living on these interest-only loans. They got in their house, and before you know it, the balloon payments came, and they couldn't afford it, and they lost what they thought was the American dream. The American dream is not wealth, it's independence. It's the freedom to make decisions on your own without the controls of government on top of you. So I would like to see Congress do a full repeal of Obamacare. I would like the free market systems to get back in place where there are federal guidelines that allow people to shop across the country, that if you go get a job that your employer does not require, that you can't. A lot of people won't quit their jobs because they don't want to lose their insurance. This insurance needs to be portable, it needs to be manageable so that the person who's buying the insurance buys what they need, not some group plan like Obamacare does, because we're managing risk. And if you manage risk, and if you manage it well, like a lot of insurance companies are doing, they're making a ton of money right now. Allow the people to actually make the choices that are in the best interest of themselves. We need to solve this problem. I do not believe healthcare is a right, but I believe that government needs to do what is right to make it possible for people to actually buy insurance that is affordable. And we're seeing that right now. The premiums are skyrocketing. People can't afford to do it, pay it anymore because they went under with a pretense of what they actually could afford. They stated what their income was. For Medicare, you actually show 2 years of tax returns, right? If you're a senior citizen and you want to get health insurance, you have to show what your income is for them to determine what type of policy you're going to get. That didn't happen with the Affordable Health Care Act. You said whatever you thought your income would be. That's why these people now find themselves without insurance, and then that burden is now falling on everybody. That's why it's falling apart. We need to get back to free market-based principles.
So when you talk about making insurance affordable, though, how do you make it affordable?
It's all risk. It's all risk. I have a form of epilepsy. Okay, my father had his own business. He paid a little bit more for my insurance. I had hospital visits, doctor visits. My wife and I, we went for a period of time without health insurance because of that. I like that pre-existing condition part. That to me is very important. So when I talk about federal regulations, that's a tenet of something that I would fully support. And that risk gets spread out by these different insurance companies who carry the burden of caring for people like myself, who have a little bit of a tick, right? But it makes it possible for everyone to be able to have access to health care because it's not just one entity. It's the entire country now that's participating. Look at the VA. That is a single-payer health system, and it is a mess. That's government-run health care. And if we don't get this right, that's what everyone's going to be seeing. Look at Senator John McCain. Did he go to a VA clinic for his surgeries? No. Went to the private industry to get his work done. People want the best service. We need to allow the private market to do what it does best, to provide competition, to let people make the choices for themselves.
You mentioned the pre-existing conditions, though. What happens when people who are healthy don't think they need health insurance, don't
Catastrophic
purchase?
insurance, you buy catastrophic, there's policies for that already. You buy catastrophic insurance, that's what we had. You know, there are policies for just about everything out there. And if there's not, that's what Congress addresses, and that's what we bring to the front. So that Congress, it's risk reward. A lot of the young people, they're healthy, they don't think they need insurance until they drive their skateboard and they crash and they hurt themselves. People don't think they need insurance, but people do need insurance. But we need to make it available to people and let them make the choice to buy that insurance, not mandate it.
Okay. Ms. Mortensen.
Healthcare is not a right. It certainly is not. The problem that we have right now is that because of President Obama and a Democratic Congress, we have the Affordable Care Act, which is affordable in name only. One of our opponents, Jack Love, one of the Democrats running for this seat, recently told us in a forum that he and his family are not even going to be able to afford insurance next year because the premiums are so high. Everyone knows the Affordable Care Act is not working. We talk a lot about Ronald Reagan. You know, Ronald Reagan said the 9 scariest words are, "I'm with the government and I'm here to help." No one wants government-run health care. But I'm also going to quote John F. Kennedy right now. He said, "Ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country." We need to make sure that the people that we do need to provide for are actually being provided for, though. Here's the thing. One of the stories I always tell is back from 2013 when I helped a little boy who had no arms and no legs get a wheelchair after Medicaid denied him 6 times. Not once, not twice, not 3 times, but 6 times. 6 times. See, we've been told this fallacy that Medicaid meets needs, that government-run healthcare meets needs. It doesn't. The very people it was created for are left in the cold. This was a little boy who didn't even have a bed. He slept in a pallet. Why did the government tell him no? We do not need government-run healthcare. We need patient-centered healthcare. We don't need insurance-run healthcare. We need patient-centered healthcare. Politico said that the biggest lie of 2012 was President Obama saying, "If you like your plan, you can keep your plan." What Congress did, and none of the journalists were willing to bring it out to the forefront when we were talking about the Affordable Care Act, is that he pillaged Medicare to fund this program, which everyone knows is a failure. I was at Channel 8 at the time. I was working with Steve Sebelius, who I know that you respect. Everyone knows the program doesn't work. The only people who are willing to say that the program doesn't work are the liberals who like to pander to the media, and the media who wants to tell everyone that Republicans are awful people who just want children to starve and not have health care. And that is absolutely not true. That is a lie. It's not a right, but we do need to provide patient-centered health care.
So how do we do that then? How do we provide patient-centered health care if the Affordable Care Act isn't the answer?
We already had it before. We had the Affordable Care Act because Obama wanted everybody to have health care. And he wanted a legacy. And he wanted something with his pretty little name on it. Well, he got it. But he's destroying this country. He's bankrupting this country. Everyone knows there isn't enough money to keep this thing afloat. What we had before was just fine because you could buy. Why, as a 65-year-old woman, do you need to buy a plan because the Affordable Care Act says so that includes maternity care? Why, if you don't have any children, do you need to have a plan that includes pediatric dentistry? Interesting, isn't it? When the government gets involved, it gets all screwed up. I used to help people with the VA all the time with their VA problems because veterans were constantly being abandoned by this government-run healthcare that's oh so fabulous. It's not fabulous, and we all know it. See, when you have politicians who are willing to tell the truth and not just give you silly sound bites, we can actually talk about a problem. It's putting your head in the sand and pretending you're Bernie Sanders and say, you can have health care, you can have health care, free health care, free health care. I don't know if he's Oprah or if he's just still Bernie Sanders. I've known him for a really long time. But not everybody can have free health care. You can't put your head in the sand and just tell people what they want to hear. That type of pandering is what the American people are tired of. I'm tired of it. You guys are tired of it. In fact, everyone here on this stage is tired of it. The question is, who's going to have the best argument and the ability to negotiate and bring to the table solutions. I'm the only person here who has brought real solutions for the people of Southern Nevada, and that's what this is about. The people of Southern Nevada know we have real problems, and it's time to have real pragmatic problem solvers, not a bunch of elitist career politicians.
So you mentioned cuts to Medicare, issues with Medicaid, the patients you advocated for trying to get them access to Medicaid. What's the answer then? Should the government fix those problems? Should it not be involved in providing those people health care?
We're always going to have Medicaid and we're always going to have Medicare, but we have to tackle the problem, and we have to look at the funding issues. You know, and everyone always says, oh, there's nothing, you can't cut enough, you can't cut enough. That's true. If we just funded Social Security and Medicare and the military and the interest on our debt and cut everything else out, guess what would happen? We'd still have a deficit. We're not going to be able to cut our way out of all of this, but we have to start somewhere. Now, the Committee for a Federal Responsible Budget has some ideas. One of them is with Medicare, you can change the way we do payouts and save an estimated $50 million. You could look at the way Medicare does generic drugs and save $50 million. That's $100 million right there. Naysayers say, oh goodness, that's not enough. You're right, it's not enough, but it's a start. We have to start somewhere. We need to talk about real solutions. The Problem Solvers Caucus, they have some solutions where it's already paid for ahead of time. There are solutions out there, but we have to have a seat at the table. And you can't ask any of us who don't have a seat at the table to solve one problem that Congress couldn't do on its own. The Republicans hated the Affordable Care Act. My God, they had 8 years to do something about it. And when they finally had a chance, what did they do? They screwed it up and did nothing, because that's what politicians do.
We could talk about health care all day, but we should probably move on to
I'd
some other.
rather talk about why pandering to the media is a good thing, but we'll talk about that at a different time. Let me switch gears here a little bit. Senator Hammond, you're up now to an issue that is both important to Nevada and has been debated already in Congress. I want to ask you a couple questions about this. If you were in Congress, would you vote to take marijuana off of the Schedule I list?
Yes, I would. And quite frankly, it's because, you know, I've been dealing with this issue actually since the 2013 session, when we already had on the books since 2000 medical marijuana and the ability to access medical marijuana, but we never had a mechanism to do so. And so I, along with several other legislators, went down to Phoenix, Arizona to kind of look at their program, find out how they administered it and how they implemented their program to make sure that we took care of any problems with whatever our solution whatever legislation we came up with. We didn't want to fall into the same pitfalls, and so we went down there and we discovered a few things. You know, as I helped write that legislation, not knowing that in the near future we were going to be legalizing recreational marijuana, what I discovered is you have to look at what are not only the pitfalls that Arizona fell into or avoided, but you know where we are as a state, any state that then legalizes recreational marijuana. And the pitfall that we came into, or that exists now for every state, is that we're all dealing with cash. It's a cash-only business. And that's a huge public safety issue. We've seen people, there's documented evidence that there's arrests, there's robberies. People are putting their lives in their own hands, these dispensaries as well as anybody else who's in the marijuana business. I think that as a public safety issue, the horse is already out of the barn, so to speak, as we always talk about. This is an issue I think that every state's going to encounter, whether or not to legalize recreational marijuana. And so you're going to have to figure out how to make sure that this industry can deal with credit instead of cash. I mean, not only are we jeopardizing those who work in the dispensaries, but ever so often they have to actually bring their money to state offices for the state workers to count for tax purposes, and they're bringing wads of cash. You know, that's an issue to me. So when you deliver that and you don't have the proper security, or you're having somebody up in a room counting cash, I think that it just opens up the opportunities for the criminal element to get involved. I'd like to avoid that as much as possible.
Did you vote to legalize marijuana?
Personally, no, I did not.
But it's here.
It's here.
It's here in this state. If you were in Congress, would you urge the Attorney General, Jeff Sessions, to not crack down on either medical or legalized marijuana in Nevada, as he seems to want to do very badly?
As he seems to want to do very badly, but I'm a states' rights person as well, and we, the people of Nevada, I may not have voted for it, but the people of Nevada spoke, and they spoke very loudly, and they wanted it, and it's here. Other states have done the same thing. You're going to have to make sure that we have some uniform laws, but then at the same time allow the states to develop their policies over time. And I think that you have to do that without the threat of the crackdown. That's another reason why we need to go in and look at whether or not we want to keep that as a Schedule a narcotic or drug. So I just I think that at this point we have to decide. We have already, as a state, we've already decided where we want to go. Now, would you please allow us the comfort of being able to do so the way we would like to? And I really think that this is a big issue that needs to be addressed right away.
You think it should be taken off Schedule 1, Mr. McKeon?
I want to cut the baby in half. Utah was a state that voted to end prohibition, and the state of Utah actually controls the sales of alcohol. So I think that would be important that if we have people that are going to work and they're smoking marijuana, the employers need to know that they can protect themselves against from potential damages from an employee that may be high or hungover or using prescription medicine. Same thing with marijuana. I believe that if you are an employer or if you work in the government agencies, you have a responsibility to make sure that you go to work sober. And I think that if Congress were to put a law into place, it would have to be somewhere along the lines where we say, listen, if you get caught smoking marijuana and you weren't buying it legally, there's certain prosecution matters over here versus if you bought it legally. Basically, there's still a criminal element with marijuana in this country. We can't deny that. So we need to be very careful. We
But
can't
it's
just-
legal here now. We're talking about Nevada.
Yeah, but not every state. Not every state.
So you would not, so you would split the baby, as you put it, because not every state has legalized
Not
it.
every state is legal. And yeah, people, 40 million people come here from all around the world, right? So say they come here, they get high, and they go back to their state where they don't allow it, and they go to work high. That state has different laws.
Did you vote to legalize it here?
I didn't. I was in the legislature. Oh, you mean on the ballot? No,
Yeah.
I did not.
As president of the Jeff Sessions fan club, as we've already determined, would you urge him not to come and crack down here on
Yeah.
in Nevada?
Yeah,
You think it's a states' rights issue,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
You wouldn't do anything to try to undo it, even though you don't support it.
correct.
All right, Ms. Mortensen, would you vote to take marijuana off of Schedule 1?
Yes.
Why?
Because right now, I don't believe it should be a Schedule 1 drug because it is legalized here. And I believe opioids are actually a Schedule 2. That's kind of crazy, isn't it? More people with illicit fentanyl and illegal opioids have far more trouble than they do with marijuana. I did not vote for the legalization of marijuana. As a pastor's wife and a lifelong Christian, you can probably imagine pot's not my thing. I don't have a whole host of knowledge on this topic. I didn't vote for it, but hey, the people did, and the people decide. That's how it works.
Why didn't you vote for it? I don't understand what being a pastor's wife has to do with not voting to legalize.
Because I'm
Don't you have any
uptight
libertarian?
and Christian, John.
But don't you have
because
any
I'm
libertarian
uptight.
impulses? Don't you have any? No, but yeah, but I'm asking you a serious question in the sense of legalizing marijuana. It could be seen as a libertarian impulse. That's what Nevada is all about. And you said no because.
Because of my personal convictions about it, and it was my right to say yes or no, and what the people decided is what the people decide. I get the libertarian angle of it, and I'm a big person. I'm very libertarian in a lot of social views. I'm a real you do you boo kind of person. And
As long as I'm not smoking pot?
no, it's legal. You can
Okay,
do it.
all right.
I don't like it. I hate that, gosh, you go to a gas station now and you got your kids with you, and all of a sudden, whoo, all you can do is smell pot. I hate that too. But you know what? I hate going into the casinos and having to smell the smoke. But guess what? It's your right to do it, and it's your legal right to do it.
So you want to outlaw cigarettes? No, I'm kidding.
No,
I'm kidding.
don't
I'm
put
kidding.
words in
No,
my mouth.
I'm kidding. So what about the question of whether? I mean, you didn't support it. You had your convictions for why you didn't support it. It's here.
Yeah.
Would if you got to Congress, would you do anything to urge the Attorney General? Go ahead now. I'm here. I hate that legalized marijuana. Go and crack down.
Absolutely
No?
not. Absolutely not.
Why not?
Because the people of Nevada very much want it, and it's thriving here, and it's growing here. I mean, Planet 13 just went public. They're doing amazing things over there. We're becoming a huge destination because of this. I don't know if Planet 13 is opened yet, but when they do, that's going to be a destination that people are going to want to come to all around the world. Just because it's not my cup of tea doesn't mean that I impose my personal beliefs on you, the people.
So you do have libertarian impulses.
I do.
There you
I
go.
really do.
There you go. Danny Tarkanian, do you think Congress should take pot off of Schedule 1?
Yes, I do, and for the reasons that Scott maintained. Make it easy for you.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
So you're for the Hammond Plan?
I'm for the Hammond.
Okay. Did you vote? Did you vote to legalize marijuana?
No, I didn't.
Why not?
I believe very strongly in libertarian views and values, but as long as the choices they're making don't substantially impact the rest of the community, and there's a question of whether marijuana would or wouldn't, particularly with whether someone is getting behind the wheel, whether they're affecting their job, and whether it leads to other drugs that are more serious. But the people here in Nevada voted for it. I'm going to vote in Washington, D.C. to support the will of the people here in Nevada.
So you wouldn't ask the Attorney General, you would say, don't come into Nevada, Jeff Sessions, right?
Not on this issue.
Not.
I'm getting ready for your next ones.
Oh, do I have another question
Yeah, I
about Jeff
believe so.
Sessions? Okay, all right, go ahead.
Okay. So, as many of you know, on Friday there was a school shooting that claimed the lives of 10 people. Some school resource officers were on hand. You know, they were able to engage the gunman within the first, few minutes of shooting, but still the shooting lasted some 25, 30 minutes. Even with the officers being on campus. This is a question a lot of people are talking about, obviously, in this country, but what should be done to curb the tide of gun violence? And we'll start with Mr. McKeon.
I think the sad reality is that human nature is human nature, and we're not going to change human nature. What disturbs me is how many more children are acting out these impulses with gun violence. And when I was a young boy, my father took me to a range, and he taught me how to respect a rifle, a pistol. And then as a Boy Scout, I went to scout camp, and I had the same training. I was taught to respect it. And I think what we're facing today in our youth, and we need to be realistic about it, is a lot of these video games that the kids are playing today. They're playing these games where they're actively shooting and killing people, but there's no consequence to that action. And when I see the post that the news put out about these kids saying how they want to go do this harm to other people, there's no consequence to their words either. There was a lady in Henderson who came to my campaign office, and she told me just recently her son was approached by another student who was talking about shooting some people at school, and asked her son if he would like to join him in doing it. He told his mother. They went and they told the school. They told the police. And you know what happened? They didn't go talk to the kid who made the threat, who said, let's go do this. They actually went and outed the kid who saw something and said something. They put the burden on him. Do you think that kid's ever going to speak out again? No, because he said as much. We need to start getting serious about protecting the people that do speak out, the whistleblowers, and making sure that they're protected. One of the things I think we need to do is these people that are on social media, these young people, we need to start watching that social media, because that's where they're expressing themselves. Because a lot of them are intimating their intentions. And we need to get serious about not only just having a physical presence there, but we have to have an online presence and seeing where these kids are coming from.
So who should be doing that? Should that be police? Should that be law enforcement asking Facebook, send us all the indications you see violent threats? Whose responsibility
The FBI
is
has
that?
completely failed. People have given notices to the FBI. People have said, these people are saying these certain things, and the law enforcement isn't following up. So yes, law enforcement has a very important role in making sure that these types of, it's like if someone were to make a call for domestic violence, the police are right there, right? They have to follow up on all these calls, but they're not doing it. And that's what has happened in a lot of these instances, is law enforcement failed to do its job. Parents have also failed to be more involved in their children's lives to figure out what it is that they're doing. That's what these kids are doing. It's violence, and they're promoting it online, and the parents are unaware. We need to, as a society, get engaged. We need to hold law enforcement accountable, and we need parents to be more involved in their children's lives when it comes to social media.
How do you get parents to be involved, though, in children's life? That's such a broad concept to just say, parents, you should be involved in your children's
There's parental
life.
controls on
How are you
social
going to go ahead and
media.
do that?
Parental controls on social media. You can actually shut down your kids' accounts if you want. You can actually create the kids' accounts if you want. But so many parents are just hands off with all the social media stuff and the video games. There are so many video games out there that are so violent, and they're rated for certain ages, but yet younger and younger children are playing these video games. And it's online, and it's accessible to all of them. We need to start tamping down a lot of things that are putting these ideas in these kids' heads.
What if a parent is comfortable with the fact that their children are playing violent video games?
Then they
Isn't
need to be
that
held
their
accountable as well with their
prerogative?
kids when they do that. They need to go to jail as well.
What about as far as video game violence? Is there anything in particular that you think should be done about that? You mentioned the sort of fault of too many kids playing video games. Should there be crackdowns on businesses that produce these games?
I think the parents need to be more engaged in their kids' lives when it comes to these video games and make better choices in what games their kids are playing. Free market's going to do the free market's going to do, but I think parents need to be more involved in what their kids are seeing and doing. Just like we have for TV shows, just like we have for films, just like there are for these video games. But that level of violence that's promoted through Hollywood and these video games, it is destroying the minds of our youth.
Okay, we'll move on to Ms. Mortensen.
You know what politicians love to do is they love to pontificate. And they love to punt, and they like to say it's society's problem. And then when you have to ask all these follow-up questions like, well, how are we going to do that? How are we going to force parents to do that? Because that's not the solution. That's what I hate about politicians. They don't ever have a solution to the problem. Well, I actually do. The problem with school violence is this, is that our school campuses are not safe. I went and visited a local high school at Mountain's Edge, and I talked to some of the teachers there and the JROTC instructors, and each one of them said, it's crazy out here, the fights that we're breaking up. We don't want any armed, we don't want to be carrying heat, we don't want to have guns on us, we need to do something about it. And that's when I realized that each school has different needs. What a school in Boulder City needs and what a school in Las Vegas needs, completely different than what a school in Pahrump and El Paso and Las Vegas need. But the one thing they absolutely need is the money to make them more secure. So if we could revamp things in the Department of Education to create block grants that each state could then have the money to give these schools the things that they need to protect themselves, we could solve the problem. That means if they need armed security, they get armed security. That means if they need bigger walls, they get bigger walls. That means if they need cameras, they get cameras. That means if they get need metal detectors, they get metal detectors. See, all of us are parents here, but I'm the only mother, and I'm a mother of 2 small girls. And my 3-year-old and my 6-year-old have to do shelter-in-place drills monthly in case there's a shooter on their campus. She's in preschool. She's in preschool. See, this is a real problem. My years in news, 18 years in news. Do you not think that I've covered a ton of mass shootings and things that have traumatized me? I understand the trauma of it. I understand how painful it is to watch these things happen. There are things that I've covered in news that have traumatized me for life. I understand we need to address the problem. The problem is no one's addressing it. And I hate when we say we have to hold people accountable, and if we see something on Facebook, oh, let somebody know and we'll do something about it. That's not true either, because I've spent my entire adult life on TV, and I have had stalkers, one who became obsessed with me while he was dealing with his schizophrenia in a mental hospital, and when he got out, he felt that God prophetically told him he needed to marry me, and he came for me, and he came to try to take my life. And no one could do anything to protect me until he crossed the line. So it's all fine and good to say, hey, I know this freak show over here is trying to stalk me, and I know he wants to hurt me, but the police couldn't do anything until he crossed a line. So we've got to quit pandering and pivoting and just using these political answers to try to satisfy and appease everyone. I'm tired of it. We need real problem solvers, and again, that's why I'm here. I didn't give up my entire career for nothing. I gave up my career to solve problems in DC because of the dysfunction that is going on there, and because I'm tired of these career politicians who give us the same soundbite over and over again.
So you talked about the block grants with schools, allowing them to sort of make the decisions about, what kind of security is best for them. How do you extrapolate that though, to sort of these broader issues of gun violence, like the violence we saw here in Las Vegas in October? You can't block grant money to, the casinos.
No,
so what's
but
the
that's
answer
where
there?
someone who committed a horrific crime, and we can't wrap our minds around it, and we always want to have the answer why. Sometimes you don't know why there are crazy, psychotic people who want to do crazy and psychotic things.
But as far as sort of what can be done to prevent that kind
You
of
cannot
violence?
stop people from committing crimes. If we could, there'd be no crime. You cannot stop people from committing crimes. I could not stop a stalker from coming after me. No one could stop Brian Clay from going into that home and doing what he did to that family. That happened 3 months after I had my baby, and that story alone traumatizes me every single day because I was so afraid something like that could happen to me. You can't stop people from doing bad things. Quit asking politicians to do that. We are not judge and juror. We are not God.
So should we just, throw up our hands and
No, you
accept
don't
the
throw up your
violence?
hands. We have laws. Guess what, Megan? It's illegal to shoot someone and kill them.
But what happens?
The law's already there. We can't. So, oh my God, someone did something illegal. Happens all the time.
In a lot of these cases, though, it's not as simple as arresting someone. In a lot of these cases,
No,
the
some
shooter
of the
might
cases
take
like
their
the
life.
Texas church shooting, it was the government who failed us because the NICS system didn't have the information in there that he shouldn't have had a gun. So let's just quit doing this political song and dance. The government needs to do something. The government can't do anything to stop bad people from doing bad things. And half the time, the government measures that are in place to try to stop it doesn't work because guess what? The government's inept. And we all know it. That's why we need pragmatic problem solvers in Congress instead of, ta-da, career politicians.
But you just said this is a problem we can't solve, that it's not something
No, we're
the
not going
government
to
can
solve.
solve.
We're not going to solve the sin of the world.
So we should just resign ourselves
No,
to
Megan,
gun
we
violence?
have laws. We have laws. You are asking silly questions right now. We have laws. We have parameters in place. But bad things still happen. And good people like yourself can't understand why. Because you're a good person. You're a good person and you don't understand why some psycho would go to freaking Mandalay Bay and shoot out the window and just willingly kill people. I don't get it either. My friends were there. My coworkers from Channel 8 were there. I was there right after it happened. I get it, Megan. It's horrible when we have horrible, evil people who commit horrific crimes. But there's no law in the book that's going to stop a psycho from doing something psychotic.
That's where I go back to, if you see something, you say something. I mean, the gentleman that was helping the shooter, he recognized that the amount of bags that guy had was odd, right? It was not normal. Some of the casino operators who are in security and law enforcement, they are now requiring, it doesn't matter if you're a high roller or not, there are mandatory room checks every 48 hours. The Strip had scenarios put in place for these types of situations, but they didn't consider a sniper shooter in that scenario. So people do bad things, we adapt to them. And that's the thing, it's evil, we're constantly playing catch up. 9/11 is a case in point. After the towers are hit, we harden up our airports. That is why a lot of people are actually doing what they can to actually make themselves a little bit more available to law enforcement as volunteers to help with the security for a lot of our campuses.
Well, let me just jump in here because we are at the end of the
Yeah.
hour, and I do want to give Danny Tarkanian and Scott Hammond a chance to answer these questions. So go ahead.
First of all, Megan, I thought those are good questions, and those are something that we need to try to find the best solution possible. We're not going to find an answer to stop all of these things from happening. First of all, how do we get to this point? What is this problem? There's a devaluation of life here in our society now. We've de-emphasized the importance of a family, of faith, of being a good person now. And we've allowed society, and whether it's the video games, the rap music, or this and that we glamorize violence. Is that going to change? Can we legislate that? No, we can't legislate that. You know, what we can do as legislators are do the best that we can to catch or prevent these people from committing the acts that they're doing. It's not a foolproof deal. You're not going to have one answer for them all, but you can try to solve some things. As David said, they're done because of history. This is important. You see what's happened that allowed these things to happen, and you use that history to try to prevent it in the future. We're learning from our mistakes with here in Las Vegas, and the hotels here are taking certain precautions to stop that from happening. Two big things that are causing that we need to do that we can control. We need to keep guns away from people who shouldn't have guns. We should have background checks for everybody. We should have a more extensive treatment for people that are on mental illnesses or that are on serious drugs, which several of these mass murders have been. We need to be able to identify these people as best as we can. With respect to the school shootings, I mean, listen, I have 4 young kids. A lot of people have kids here on this stage, and we all love them very much and we don't want anything to happen to them. What can we do to solve these problems here in the school system? Well, you know, when 9/11 happened, we made changes to get on an airplane. We go to see a Golden Knights hockey game. There's more precautions now, metal detectors, search of things to prevent people from coming in that would have weapons. Unfortunately, and how sad it is for our society, we're at that point for our school children. We're going to have to limit the area of ingress and egress of people coming into the school system. We're going to have to check them. We're going to have to make sure their guns aren't coming in there. It's going to be a big inconvenience. It's really sad we got to this point in our society, but that's where we're at, and the life of our children are every bit is much more important than the lives of someone going to a sporting event. We need to protect our children. They're the most vulnerable.
Before we get to Senator Hammond, really quickly, you mentioned background checks and that there should be background checks. Do you support universal background checks even for private gun shows and private transfers?
I think we absolutely have to keep the guns away from bad people, and that's the best way to do so.
And so you do support?
Yes.
Okay. Senator Hammond.
Well, thank you. I'm glad I got a chance to respond. I know it's taken a long time to get here. Look, as a parent, I know sometimes people like to think that they're the only ones who can empathize with situations, but I think a lot of us can empathize because we all have children. I'm married to my wife of almost 27 years, and she's the mother of 4. So we talk about this almost daily because not only have I been a teacher, my wife is now teaching the 5th grade, and so we talk about these situations because they're affecting our lives every single day. We're sending our kids every day to schools, and we're wondering, are they going to come back? We have learned a lot about school violence in general, about shootings on schools, and we've sort of adapted, and we're adapting faster and faster. For example, when I first started teaching, when they said we have a lockdown situation, incredibly, I would have to go outside of my door, lock it, and then go back inside. Somebody finally realized that you can actually cut down on a lot of the potential loss of life if you actually lock the door from inside, kept your door locked, because a criminal who's going around shooting at school or any other place, they're looking for opportunities. And so if they go to a door and it's locked, they're going to move on to the next thing, and they're going to try and go to the next one. So it was a major step, just retrofitting some of the schools and locking them from the inside. I think that basically what I'm saying is layers of security. I'm working with another group of people who they have a private company, and they offer what they call boxes. It's a system. And they do a great job, because what they do is it's an early warning detection system, so to speak. It's all thumbprints and alarm systems. If you see something that's going on in the school and you have to be staff, teacher, administrator at the school, and you go into your room and you put your finger on that box, it sends an early warning alarm system right to early responders, to the police and the fire department, to anybody who needs to know about the shooting. It sends it to them right away, so that the response time is cut down. The reason why you do that is because sometimes a teacher would have to then, and the way we did it just a few years ago is a teacher would have to call the administrator, because the administrator could be in another part of the school where they didn't even know what was going on. Some of these schools, these school campuses are so large, something could be happening on one side and the administrator would never even hear what's going on. And so the response time was lengthy. So these are solutions, these are practical solutions that are happening now, because we're seeing the need to make sure we're protecting our kids. I guess what I'm getting at is there's also this idea that you have to have layered answers, layered security. When I first opened up the school, when I was first started working and the school was opened up in the morning, you opened up the gates and anybody could wander around the school, the whole school. Now we've locked down all the gates on the outside. I was in a portable, and anybody could have accessed. Anybody could have walked around out to the athletic fields where the portable was close to. Anybody could have done that. Now you have to go through. They funnel them all through the front office, and they try to make sure that there's no access to the back hallways, because they lock them down. Now, of course, they can shoot their way through in some situations, but they try to do their best to make sure that people aren't able to just have access. So we're learning as we go along. We've got a lot of problems in society, and I think they've been noted, right? This is a multifaceted problem. Our society has changed. When I was a kid growing up in Alaska, we would bring guns in the back of our truck, and have them in the gun rack, because we go hunting afterwards. Never once did we ever think about bringing them into the school. Things have changed societally that we've got to think about what's going on in society as well. Parents do need to get more involved. My wife and I get involved, and my son still looks at us and says, I'm 18 now, I'm about to graduate. Can I get a Facebook account? Not sure yet. You're going to be gone pretty soon, then you can decide on your own if you want to get that Facebook account. But these are things that as parents you have to make. You have to be involved in your kids' lives. What are kids watching? What are they playing? What are they listening to? These are all things, and of course, I think society will start to change a little bit. We'll start to wonder if we made mistakes. That'll come. But as far as the schools are learning. They're learning, and they have to learn a little bit faster, but we've got to find ways to make sure the schools are safer. And I'm looking at pragmatic solutions to these. This company that comes in and they install this equipment. It does cost a little bit more money, but they're doing pilot programs right here in Clark County. There's 2 schools, I believe, that are doing it.
How do we address gun violence, though, sort of more broadly, and not just within schools, but it happens elsewhere, too?
And again, these are bad people. We've addressed it. There's a lot of bad people out there who have lost touch with reality. I guess my point of telling you about growing up in Alaska is that guns haven't changed since then, but people have, and society has. And so we kind of have to look at that and figure out where we're going to go as a society. And I know not everybody loves that answer, but when you actually stop and you think about it for a while, you know that there are changes that have happened, and we've got to address that as well having less, or we have to address that as well as trying to find ways to make sure that we keep the guns away from those who are not safe.
And how do we keep guns away from those who are not safe?
Well, actually, do the job that it intended. The FBI had so many opportunities to make sure that certain school shootings didn't happen, and they failed. We have to make sure that they implement their procedures and do them correctly.
All right, we are out of time. First, thanks I want to give to the candidates. None of you had to come and debate. Your willingness to put your name on the ballot took some courage. It takes courage to sit up here on the stage with the rest of your opponents and to talk about these very difficult issues. So I want to thank all 4 of you for coming here today. Thanks for joining us at UNLV. I want to thank everybody who watched this debate. As I said, it'll be archived later on the Nevada Independent site. My staff and my number 2 would kill me if I didn't mention the NevadaIndependent.com. Go check it out, please. I also want to thank, of course, our wonderful partners at UNLV TV and the Hank Greenspun School who have made this happen and made everyone, well, almost everybody, look good. I'm always the exception to this rule. I also want to tell everybody that there's 2 more debates this week that we'll be involved in. One on Thursday at 6:30 on KTNV Channel 13. We'll have the gubernatorial candidates, and then same time on Friday, we'll have that's a Democratic gubernatorial campaign candidates, and then Friday, same time on Channel 13, we'll have the Democrats running for Reuben Kewin's congressional seat. Thanks again for joining us for the Indy debate.